Oh, good morning, good evening, and welcome aboard to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob. And I'm your griot. What is a griot? That is a person who tells you a story that opens up your mind. That doesn't represent a belief structure, doesn't you doesn't represent you know political, spiritual, no, anything that you would believe in to the point of being prejudiced. I often would say to people when I would hear them go on about this, that, or the other thing, boy, you're prejudiced. They go, what do you mean? Some of my friends are black. And I say, no, that's racism. Prejudice is when you believe in a motif, a political, social, cultural, economic, even religious, because religion is more or less a business plan, right? So now spiritual faith is a whole different thing. That's a relationship between you and that thing you have faith in. It's not a club, right? Now the club is the human race, all, and not just the human race, but all our relations. That means everything on this experiential plane. Every feathered, every scaled, every skinned, every creature is our relation. Every plant, every phylum, every bion, germ and bacteria are, all you, boy, I have a gut feeling about this. That's all those billion little guys and gals in your gut. And they're like connected to your brain. I mean, your neural net is not just your five senses. When you can shut a squirrel up in your metal cage of a mind, of a Rolodex of just facts, that's not your consciousness. Not even close. And your soul isn't even your consciousness. So anyway, so what is the good news? If we take it from the concept of the good news of Jesus Christ, the Latter Day Saints. Now we'll leave the Latter Day Saints out, but just Jesus Christ. What did he come to say? He didn't come to say you're all sinners, and if you believe in me, you're going to go to heaven. Everybody else is going to hell. No. Jesus Christ's really good news was that we're all going to heaven. Everyone, even the sinners, because he hung out with sinners and prostitutes and everything. The people who were his cadre, that's with them. The male morons that the King James call his apostles, they were more greedy and it's all about me. It's all about me. Mark, Luke, John, and Larry. They all were telling a story from their point of view. How many likes were they going to get? How many thumbs up are they going to get? So here we are, 3 minutes in, and we're waiting for the crowd to show up. And earlier today, let's see. Let's see. There we go. That's good news. It's live. Let's see what Wake Up. So this afternoon, I had this show called Wake Up. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. This is Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob. I am your griot. I'm here to tell you stories. And it's, what time is it? 1:46 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, wherever you are. Just checking in. For some reason, the things I do, the shows I do on this, don't go down on my site. And they go into my videos in my editing suite, but not up there, and I haven't figured out how to move them, so one day I will. Let's see.
mean, yeah, like the Nimbus tablets and whatever, what are they all? Are they pointing to Lemuria and Atlantis
and things, things before that, and technologies? And that's why this entity, people call it that, the Illuminati. No, that's just another, what would you call it? Distraction. Anything that you hear talked about, made a propaganda and distraction, it has to be at least coming from 20% truth. Like my stories, right? And I constantly say, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are. Welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your Sensei Al Bob, and don't believe a word I say, right? And yes, these stories are true, and why you really go, boy, well, they are. But they're also, he's wearing those, and he's got a football jersey on, and he's got football pads on, and he's got the jersey, and he's got a community. He's got these high. I don't know if you've seen that, when he was dressed up as Ron. And we go down. He had this gigantic truck. Those trucks that are like 10 feet off the ground, and 8-foot tires, right? One of those kind of, my penis isn't big enough, so I have to have this truck. And I needed like a rope and a crane to get me out because I weighed 100 more pounds than I back of the pickup truck so I could get out of the truck. And so he's coming down. I don't know. There's one lawyer who looks like I get along with him, and I get along with who he would get along with all the other people in my family, right? Like he'd get along with Danica and my parents and stuff. So I get along, but he's from Las Vegas. Okay. So I don't know because he's not in Virginia and I have to move or something. But if he can represent me and help me, I'm going to talk to him and see. Like I don't want to leave. It'd be a shame to leave for your house, especially this house. Like, lawyers know. Lawyers, I don't know. I guess he might know a lawyer in Virginia. Get along with him. He might have a friend. Yeah, there's a lawyer that he could recommend. So I want to get someone to write a letter and say she has to go. Anyway, so that this afternoon's show is up there. And let's see, somebody was in and then they're out and we're waiting for the crowd. So let's see. So we had Dave. Yes, Dave. Let's see if we can find Dave. Oh, talking about David. Let's see. Let's try David. We'll get into Mr. Colestron. Ooh. I'll call up my friend Eric B. I've known Eric at least 20 years, since 91. I'll wait till his voicemails pick up and then we'll hang up. Okay. That boy didn't answer. Let's see. Let's see if Reverend J answers. Okay, let's see. Who else? Oops, contacts. Mary, Liz, Camp, Roger, Sammy, Soul, Pi, MSTS, Suntress, Bernadette, Jesse, Mac, Connect. Council Ron, Craig. Yeah. Dave Black Dog. Oh, let's try Dave Black Dog. Here's another David. Okay, that boy's not going to pick up. Yeah, if it rings 5 times, you'd think they'd answer. Most of these folks you see, if I call them before, around 11 a.m., they answer. But 9 isn't that late. Well, no, he's not answering either. I don't know what he's been up to. I tried to call him a couple times today. It's another David. There are a lot of Davids in my life. Let's see. Let's try Garrick.
Hello.
Hey there, G. What it is? Where you at? What's your 20?
Just leaving Lordsburg.
Oh, so you got a few minutes to talk?
A little bit. I'm without talk down. I've been on the phone a lot, but go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm live on my show, and I've been calling up people and having them as guests. And I was just wondering if you had anything you wanted to say about New York City when we were there in the 80s.
Well, it was alive and a vibrant place because it was changing. And change is what makes things vibrant because there are new elements, new people, new ideas, new cultural paradigms coming into play. And that is always exciting. Sometimes it's terrible when the change is a disaster, but sometimes it's terrific when the change is improvement. And I think that is what was happening in the 80s in New York, especially in Lower Manhattan, which was really a burned out mess of its own. And suddenly all these artists came in, and all these writers, all these thinkers, all these musicians, all these social activists, and out of the rubble of Lower Manhattan and the East Village made a community. And in that community sprouted all kinds of incredible things: art, music, science, even some, oh God help us, politics. And these things sprouted, and it was multicultural, it was multiracial, it was full of vibrant ideas. It was a really refreshing moment, and it wasn't just at CBGB's.
Right. It was the whole Alphabet City thing. And you were out in the West. Were you there in New York City in the 70s when New York went bankrupt?
No, I visited briefly a couple of times to see my grandmother. But I was probably in New York. I was there at the early part of the 70s a couple of times when I was traveling around the country, promoting the first Rainbow Gathering in Colorado in 72. And then I was hardly there at all. I really put on my coveralls and I grew organic vegetables for the next 8 or 9 years and barely came out of the woods.
So I was telling people about the Rainbow Gathering, and tell the folk about how you brought me into the Rainbow Gathering, how we went, David and I went out to the West where Joni was in the hospital, and what was your take on all of that? And then that time you took me to the first gathering I went to, a real gathering, on your bus, and how I showed up at your front door tripping, and you screamed at, not me so much, you guys were like having a discussion, and I told me you gave me a sleeping bag, and you told me to go sleep someplace else, and how I was what was a good, when you were baptized. I was baptized in the fire of the Rainbow Gathering.
Well, I'd say that you told the story pretty well yourself just now.
Right.
But to be fair, I was with Joni as a couple, and we got in an auto accident when we were on our way to a court case concerning the rights of people publicly to assemble on our public lands. And because we've been doing this in such a free-form style, in such a spiritual anarchistic style, the government, in its charming way, decided to restrict us through regulations. And we fought those regulations in court, and they had to put a regulation in that meant anybody in America who had a meeting on public lands for expressive purposes of 10 or more people had to go get a permit. And we said, that's ridiculous. These are our public lands. We're already paying the taxes. We're already participating. I mean, if we cut trees, there are laws against it. If we damage the water, there are laws against it. But just to go and stand on our own land, that doesn't make sense that we have to get a permit. So we went to have this court case, and we got in an accident, an auto accident on the way to court. And Joni got racked up pretty badly, and she had pins put in her to hold her back together. She's doing really well now.
She was in a halo. Oh,
yeah, they put a halo of metal around her head and around her neck and around her
thorax.
And around her thighs,
right,
to hold her together. And the Ethical Enterprise team of David and his buddy, the electrician, that would be you,
yes,
Howell, came out to visit her while she was having her various operations in Tucson, Arizona, which is where I'm headed right now. And that was a remarkable time, because what we had was, just like in the East Village, we had 4 different but similar minds, 4 different but similar uber geniuses coming together. We had Owl, we had myself, we had David Boyle, a renowned architectural, a social engineer. We had a Joni Freedom, who was one of the founders of the community garden movement in New York. We had yourself, the electrician who wired up the Living Theater and Xenon, the amazing rock club, and everybody had credits behind them, but we didn't care about the credits. What we cared about was the current conversation.
And also getting Joni whole. That was why we came out there. I brought my little, not just my, my body electric. That's what I brought to Joni.
That's right, because when I say ideas that were current, it's also ideas that were full of current.
Right.
Ideas that were full of electrical energy flowing through us.
So we had a great time, especially in that Mexican restaurant.
Oh my God, we ordered a table full of pictures of margaritas.
Right.
Unbelievable. It was a grand scene. And, Joni eventually recovered. And Joni and I let me go back, just flip back one page.
Right.
We won that court case. And those regulations were found impermissibly unconstitutional. In this great moment, the judge said, so if you have 10 so-called countercultural hippies gathering in the forest, or you have 9 so-called countercultural hippies gathering in the forest, and the 10th one shows...
Uh-oh.
Correct. That's what they have to do.
Right. And
if not, they'll be liable for 90 days in jail and $500 fine. And the prosecution said, right. And the judge said, so let me suppose that my friends, there were 9 of them, and the 10th one, would they permit, or would they be able? They in jail. And the prosecutor said, well, in a case like that, and the judge said, that's exactly what I thought. This regulation discretion on certain people and to let others not be picked on. This is a prejudicially oriented regulation, and we're going to strike it from the books of American law. So we won that court case while Joni was up in the hospital, and the upshot was in the following years we had a school bus, and we got David and we got Owl on the school bus, and we trucked out to these free-spirited events on the National Forest land with no admission charge and no worker bees cleaning up and cooking and parking. Everybody participated. Everybody's a worker bee, and everybody is a prince or a queen. Everybody gets to rule, and everybody gets to serve. Now, that's a new idea for the bureaucracy to face, but I think it's a paradigm that, with a little good luck, humanity is headed towards.
It's called the we and me.
It's the we and me. It's not trying to find out what everybody can do for you.
Right.
It's finding out what we can do for each other.
And always through doing our best.
When we do our best, we shine.
Right.
And it's not trying to do our best. You just plain old do your best. And, just like when we gave you that sleeping bag.
Right.
And there you were. You showed up at the front door, and we were out there in the wild woods, and we were just sitting up late night, as they used to say, tripping our brains out. And you showed up, and we did our best, because the right thing to do was to give you a sleeping bag and explain it all in the morning.
And the thing that happened, it was late at night, I couldn't see, and I fell off a cliff. And this is a quintessential essence of what a rainbow situation is. I flew down that thing and smashed through about 20 different camps. And I came because it had rained and it was a little slippery. And I met, 400 people in a space of 5 minutes. And so that was when I got to the bottom, I was in the Hell's Angel camp, sleeping. I was spooning one of the boys, and he greeted me, "I love you," and it went from there.
Exactly. Well, the question really is, can everybody get along?
Right.
And it's very easy for all the Hell's Angels to get along with each other, and it's very easy for all the Flower Power Peaceniks, and it's very easy for all the radical progressives, and it's very easy for all the right-wing conservatives to get along with each other. The question is, can these different groups, can these different types of people get along with each other? And I think that question is what the future peace on earth depends. And I think everybody can get along. I'm with Rodney King. Why can't everybody just get along?
Yep, pretty much. And even though the gatherings can be clunky, just because you get 20,000 people in the middle of a national forest and you build a city in less than 2 weeks, how many years has it been going on?
We're coming up to the 50th anniversary.
Right. So
50 years, water systems that feed thousands of people that are put up and taken down, kitchens that provide food for everybody freely, everything from herb walks and home birthing lessons to philosophical things, to dances and performances, to drumming, scientific study, mountain climbing, mountaineering, sculpting, and there's 150 different workshops on 150 different topics. Anybody can come and set up and teach something or learn something. It's all free, and everybody does it. And the way it is one of the old expressions is, remember, when putting your finger into the pie, to make sure that everyone gets a taste.
Right. And the Rainbow Gathering is a very interesting smorgasbord of cultural dynamics from times long ago, from the native indigenous people, which is where the Rainbow Gathering got its name, correct?
Well, we are a tribe, that's for sure. And we're not trying to be a Native American tribe. Every culture, every religion, every people, every sort of race or nationality has tribal roots if you go back. And we've lost that tribal knowledge. For an example, tribal power is based on process, not position. There isn't a person who's in charge of the water system.
Right.
There's someone who picks up the water pipe and starts laying it on the ground. So in all the tribes, whether they're the ancient Hebrew tribes or the Scandinavian tribes or the Native American tribes, it's based on who's doing what. And the power of the tribe is based on your process, not by being appointed to some position and then everybody under you has to follow you and everybody over you gets followed by you. Instead, it's if you pick up the logs to make a bridge, then you're in charge of picking up the logs to make the bridge. If you pick up the garbage, you're in charge of the garbage. If you park the cars, you're in charge of parking the cars. And this is something that hierarchical bureaucracy cannot function with. It's a different kind of function. Tribal function is spiral. It's not hierarchical. And this is something that is just a little piece of the tribal wisdom, because the tribal wisdom needs to be incorporated into our modern world if humanity is going to survive.
Well, that comes from the essence of respect. From my experience of the Rainbow Gathering, I had a skill set of healing and negotiating, and I did it on the small set, meaning I would just walk through and I'd be at kitchens. I do have my little hours to help people at different kitchens and etc. And I never was a guy to go to the council and make the big speech. I dealt with individual people. But the interesting thing is, like my experience of facilitating and scouting was with NERF, and when we did the Ithaca Gathering. So about the Ithaca Gathering.
Oh, the Ithaca Gathering was a spectacular scene. It was the largest regional gathering that we'd had. There are annual gatherings that occur over the 4th of July weekend. And then there are regional gatherings that occur in different areas, different countries, different times of the year. And this was the largest regional gathering that had yet occurred. And it was in a place near Finger Lakes that was incredibly beautiful, fabulous camping, but it didn't have a lot of springs. The water was downflow in the lakes, and we were up on the side of the mountains, and Owl figured out how to get these giant water bladders in way up top and then pipe the water down into the camp. And so we had good drinking water.
Now, you know what that was? So I kind of got hoodwinked into that. There was I was at Cornell in Ithaca after I left New York in '88, and someone said, "Oh, you're a Rainbow guy. Here, come to this meeting." And everyone voted for me to be the facilitator of this gathering. And I had nothing. What? And two sisters, Kamala and another sister, said, "We'll help you." And the first thing I did was New York State had no federal or national, no parks, no federal land, because the Dutch rented everything. And so that gathering, the only place we could put it in the whole of New York State was on the Iroquois nations, because they were a different nation. And that 1,000 acres was Iroquois land. And I was hanging out with Grandfather David, who was the chief, and his son, who was the administrative chief. He was David too. And they looked Dutch. They had blonde hair, blue eyes. And we were involved in a court case with the Iroquois nation because they had rented the state of New York to the Dutch. And in 1999, they were going to get the state back. And so that was never going to happen. So they kept going and negotiating. So I was involved in that as driving Miss Daisy. And so I told David, Grandpa David, about it. And he said, "Oh, we got this 1,000 acres. You can use that." So was that site. And those 600 acres of those pastures where we had the parking, and then the other 2 pastures were the gigantic meadows. He said that, we in February we walked through it. Then I called up the state trooper guy and the county sheriff and the county administrator. And what's the big Watkins Glen, right? Watkins Glen was in that county, and that was right. That big lake in front was Seneca Lake. And we went there, and I said to the guy, "Listen, we're going to have this gathering on the Iroquois Nation land. So you really can't say anything about it, but it's in your county. So we're coming to you respectfully to say, let's do this together." And they were so amazingly, whoa. So the police, the state troopers, and the county guys, they gave me, highway equipment to clear roads, and brought in thousands of dollars of culverts and stone to put it down on Indian land, right? And that's why you could just drive off the county road and drive into that parking lot. And that water bladder, the guy who was the county commissioner, his brother-in-law had a water business that brought water to Watkins Glen. And he said, "How many people are you going to have?" And I said, "I don't know, about 20,000 maybe." And he said, "Oh, that's nothing. We bring water to 100,000 people every weekend So he had these big tanker trucks, and it was all of his pipe. He laid it down, and we laid it out to where, so all of the kitchens had water like taps, but they didn't have to carry the water, and the welcome home, the highway guy gave me a grader, and the main road, the main street of the gathering, we laid it out and put piles of wood where kitchens were. I mean, it was like people walked in and it was all ready for them to work. They didn't have to do anything. That was the beauty of that.
When the people and the so-called public servants and the community work together, it looks like a miracle.
Yep.
It's not a miracle. I mean, it's a miracle that it happens. But when it happens, and it happens because everybody is looking out for each other, and then all the good things in the world can happen. It's that simple. It's so simple for everybody to cooperate instead of trying to grab their own and run like heck away from everybody else.
And so the feds couldn't come into that gathering because it was on native land. And the county and the highway patrol wouldn't, go along with the feds, because I showed them that they were going to make $1 million. There were 2 stores at the end of where you came up the county road and then came up the stone road that we built for everyone to come up. Everyone did their shopping there. And those 2 gas stations were owned by the county commissioner's brother. So
that's it. It's totally fair.
Right.
When people cooperate, if somebody profits, well, bravo.
Right, exactly.
They're not squeezing anybody. They're providing a public service. And some of these little towns that the Rainbow Gatherings have gone to, the freeway bypassed them, and the Walmarts bypassed them, and they're sitting there, small towns, eking out an existence, trying to get by, trying to figure out how they're going to pay the land taxes. And here come these crazy, wild counterculture cats called the Rainbow Gathering people, and they show up, we show up, and suddenly this little country store has its shelves sold out and its truck suppliers coming in, loading up stuff, and people are buying everything from dog food to batteries to sleeping bags to hats to tools to ice cream, and these little cafes and little general stores in the outback of America, suddenly, oh my God, they don't have to sell the farm.
Right. It's like the same thing.
I don't begrudge that at all.
No, that's the way it should work. I mean, that's real capitalism and not crony capitalism.
Exactly right. That's the people being served by people that have been working for a long time, and suddenly they hit pay dirt, and everybody benefits. It's It's a win-win-win situation. That's what we're after, and it's doable. You know, and the reasons it doesn't happen is exactly because of the bankster corporate crony capitalist system that's trying to squeeze those little stores out of existence instead of supporting them.
Right. And the same thing happened in Vermont. The next national, where Jimmy, the scouts, we found a great place called Mount Moosilauke, and Dartmouth was on the other side of the mountain. They were going to give us $30,000, and again, we went to the county police and all of those guys, and we're making a great deal. And then the obtuse rainbow politics forced us to have this gathering instead of in the most beautiful place that had the best logistics into the worst place that had the worst logistics, and it still worked out.
Yeah, we've been pushed and bullied by all kinds. It depends. By all kinds, it depends in which situation we land. In one case, the county commissioners think it's terrific. In another case, the county commissioners bring a lawsuit against us.
Right.
In one place, the feds are friendly. In another place, the state is friendly. In another place, the locals are friendly, or vice versa. It has to do with people's prejudices, people's insights, people's personal connections. And that's how it is. We do the best we can. And, since these times, Al, these gatherings have spread all over
the world. Yep.
I saw just last week for the first time this whole scene about the Taiwan gatherings.
Really?
And they have posters out, and the posters are all covered with bright, colorful anime figures. And and it's like so different from that a jewel in the lotus kind of look of the westernized rainbow flyers and internet memes. It's all anime figures holding hands and dancing together. But I say this: we're not going to get peace on earth from a bunch of big fat cat ties and jackets and pantsuited upper echelon elitists meeting in Geneva. We're going to get world peace because people are going to learn each other's recipes, each other's songs, each other's histories, each other's mythologies, and their children are going to play together in the meadow, and that's what's going to teach the different peoples of the world that we have common roots, that we have common bonds, that we have a common love for each other and for the earth. It's going to come from sharing and caring, not from some paper negotiation in some fancy hotel in Dubai or Oslo.
Right. That's going to just bring us a fascist, brave new world. A brave old world, not a brave new world,
I say this: it's a choice between a new world order and a new world culture. I'm with the new world culture.
Right. Culture always is the beauty. You and I are both New York boys, right? You grew up there too, right?
Yeah. I tell people I was born on the Big Island, and they say, Hawaii? No,
Manhattan, right. But we both grew up there, and as a youngster, like 0 to 6, I was up in Harlem, and what my grandma, who's 100% Italian, and see, people don't realize that Harlem wasn't all black. Everybody on 2nd Avenue, all the way up to where Harlem River is, every 2 blocks was a different nationality: Lithuanian, Italians, all the different types of Lithuanians, all the different types of Polish, you name it. That was like the Lower East Side was the same way. And it wasn't a melting pot, it was a salad bowl.
Yes, that's exactly right.
All those flavors didn't melt into Velveeta cheese. They were all separate, but they were on top of each other, so they made it taste better.
I agree, exactly right. We need that kind of situation again, and the gatherings do that. We were at the gathering in Georgia, and we had all these, for lack of a better term, rednecks mixing it up with all these black folks from Atlanta and all these long-haired guitar players from Alabama, and everybody was getting along really, really beautifully. And that's the trick. You've got to learn doesn't happen automatically. And
No,
the way to learn it is through close experiences. You put the water line down together.
you dig the shitter. I mean, I dug so many slit trenches that, that's when you really get to know. And it's interesting when you're hauling water or doing slit trenches or working in a kitchen. It's very interesting because it's usually the same people. And that's one thing that drew at least me to go to rainbow gatherings when I could. And that was that I would only experience that kind of camaraderie and the same, meaning I kept going to gatherings because I would like water. I'd only see water when I was in comm, when I was working in comm. And who's the guy who did Kitty Village?
It was Felipe for a long time.
Right. So he too was great. And
he's semi-retired now, and it's passed over to a new group of people. It's beautiful. He gave them all his equipment for Kitty Village and all the equipment he carried for 20 years on his buses, and he offloaded it to this whole new generation of folks that are caring for Kitty Village today. And Kitty Village is one of the most important parts of the rainbow because that's where the future is being born.
Right. And so it's, but it's, so instead of feeling, oh, I don't want to dig a shitter or, build a trail. No, it was like exciting and fun. I mean, there was never anything that wasn't fun there, Well,
I'll tell you one story. When at the first Rainbow Gathering, there was a big get together with the press, and the meeting with the press led into a court case around Colorado's recently passed anti-Woodstock law, which they called Woodstock laws, but they were made to prevent big rock and roll festivals, which a lot of the states thought were back in those days horrific, drug-fueled,
anti-American. This ain't America.
Exactly. And so they passed these so-called Woodstock laws, and in the press conference and subsequently in the courtroom, the press and the judge said, well, how are you going to dispose of your human waste if you're not going to buy porta potties and truck them up the side of the mountain? What are you going to do with 20,000 people's excrement? And I said, Your Honor, we're going to dig slit trench latrines. And His Honor said, and what precisely is that? And I said, it's right here in the Marine Corps Field Manual. It's what our boys have been doing since before the Civil War. It's how you do it. Here's a picture of it, page 134. And this is what we're going to do. And the judge looked at it and said, it's good enough for the United States Marines. It's good enough for me.
Right.
There you go. It's simple.
Yes, it was.
The techniques are ancient. Let me tell you, the Marine Corps didn't invent that. They just printed it.
Right, exactly. Hannibal's troops did that too,
Hannibal's troops did it. They did it in ancient times as soon as we had civilization.
Yep.
We had to have things like that. And the way I learned about it in the Marine Corps manual was from my parents' play, Jack Gelber's play, The Brig, which was a day in the life of a Marine Corps prison, which came out at the same time as Alexander Solzhenitsyn's book, Darkness at Noon, which was about a day in the life of a Russian prison. And that was the #1 book on the bestseller list in the Times and the LA Times and the London Times and the Book Review. It was the #1 book, and suddenly here comes this hour-by-hour accounting of life in a Marine Corps prison. And it was a shocking scene, and the government fought the Living Theater over this production, tried to close it down unsuccessfully, and ultimately, the play made its mark, and to a certain degree, the Marine Corps prisons changed. They didn't become paradises, but they got rid of some of the unbelievable horror that were going on. But in the Marine Corps brig, when you're not doing something, you are standing at the foot of your bunk reading the Marine Corps Field Manual. And so on every bunk on the stage set, there was a Marine Corps Field Manual. And myself, as a youngster in the theater, I picked those books up, and as having an interest in outdoor stuff and camping, hiking, all the outdoor skills, I read that Marine Corps Field Manual from cover to cover. And when it came time to figure out how we're going to deal with the excrement at the gatherings, well, heckity-do.
Yep.
There was a plan printed out, and I couldn't believe it. They asked me directly about it, and I pulled out the manual, and I said, here's the answer. And that's what we still do today.
Right, they still do today, yep. So the interesting thing is the Rainbow Gathering is a great example. And it's not perfect. It has lots of issues, and we've talked about that. But what's interesting to see, like when Sicardi Park happened, right? And I was in Virginia, people who I'd been, doing that, I worked on the anti-nuclear scene in the 80s and the El Salvadorian thing in the 80s. And the thing we did with homesteading in New York, most of those people were basically illegal people. That's why they had to live in an abandoned building, And
well, exactly. But we had the skills,
right,
amongst our whole community, with you, me, David, Joni, and so many others.
Right, Marissa, right,
Alfred Yalu, and many, many
right.
others, to be able to take an abandoned building, make it habitable, figure out how to get the water up to the top and pull it down into the different apartments, figure out how to build together, figure out how to make an abandoned disaster area work for human habitation.
Into a community. And now I left New York in 88 and didn't come back to 2011. And it was amazing to see the difference of, if you went below Avenue B, you were taking your life in your own hands, and then I come back and it's like totally bushed out. And when I was walking down Avenue A, right near B, where the our bank was, our communal bank, the lady who started it with the rest of us, I hadn't seen her since 88. She came running out and said, "Oh, look, where have you been?" And I said, "Oh, other places." And she goes, "Do you know what today is?" And I said, "I don't know, Wednesday." And she goes, No. This is our 15th anniversary of the communal bank. And you know how much money we have in it? And I said, "No." She said, $1 billion.
Yeah, Lower East Side People's Federal Credit Union.
Yep.
Absolutely right.
And then she said, and that $1 billion isn't like in the vault. It's in people's houses and businesses and college educations.
It can be done.
It can be done. If you, I, and the other handful of chuckleheads could do it, anybody can do it.
I agree completely.
That's
right. People look at the Rainbow Gatherings and they say, "Look, you bunch of scattershot, counterculture, artistic, barefoot characters. What is wrong with you?" And we say, "You know what? Everybody in this community is being fed. Everybody in this community has medical care. All the old people have support systems. Their kids have schooling and are learning things. And the whole place is an educational ground for learning about how to care for the environment." And my question is, if we so-called loop-de-loo weirdos can do it, why can't everyone else?
right. And the other thing is, what I see as the anthropologist that I am, there are two things. There's pleasure and happiness. And the Rainbow Gathering runs on happiness, and the material world runs on pleasure. And pleasure is both are physical. They both have representations in your brain chemistry, but the pleasure has a tendency to be materialistic, and the pleasure comes from consumption of substances, whereas the happiness comes from the service to the other rather than taking advantage of the other.
The sharing of materiality instead of the acquisition of materiality.
Right. But
profound concept.
Yep. So that's what my, social scientist self sees, and I've seen, and even no matter how awkward or, when things can. That really interesting is a lot of things screw up, and people could get mad and blah blah blah, but they don't. They kind of regroup and go back at it and do their best, and that's what it kind of So no one's perfect, and if you screw up the first time, you just don't do that again, and you learn from that screw up, and you move forward, and you make it work. And that's the beauty of the Rainbow Gathering. It does that. And when I see other entities like Occupy was a good example. Zuccotti Park was amazing. That was like a Rainbow Gathering. That really worked.
There were a lot of people involved.
Right.
There was a time in the 1980s, in the middle of these no nukes demonstrations, where the uptight left-wing organizers of these demonstrations didn't want these so-called hippie types, these counterculture types, these alternative reality types coming in their paisleys and their scarves and their multicolored hairdos. They didn't want to be seen like that. And yet, by the time Occupy came around, every single Occupy in the country, especially in New York, you went to the medical center. There were people there from the Rainbow Comm Unit.
Right.
You went to the places where people were recycling. There were people who did the recycling at the gatherings. You went to the places where the food was being cooked, and there were people who were cooking from the different kitchens. And the Rainbow people, the Rainbow kids, and the Rainbow oldsters were all being welcomed by Occupy as part of the larger community of the 99%.
Because the Occupy, I went to lots, I kind of was, a friend of mine was involved in the before those old folks got maced, which was the big mistake of the police. I think one of the old ladies died. So the cops had to really step back because the media was there. And because at the very, very beginning, there was just 20 people there. And all they did was talk, and they talked in this new way instead of being, pyramidal structure. Everyone was, basically the Iroquois longhouse,
Yeah, the white roots of peace.
Right.
And the Iroquois design, which was really the council design.
Yep.
And at Occupy, they called it the General Assembly.
Right.
And it's a fantastic example.
Right.
Examples like that, they flourish for a short time.
Right, because it's easy to break them down, meaning I remember having this one meeting, and there was this obvious guy who was a, Stalinist obstructionist plant from the police department, right? I mean, all his tie-dye stuff was bought at Kmart's, and he still had the tags on it. And we just said, hey, buddy, come on, come into the group. He was trying to, it's okay. We know you're a plant, but that's all right. We love you. And he totally freaked out, and he, then became part of it. And then he kind of fit in. Now, and then we had our own plant inside the police department, and that's kind of how it works.
I spent 3 nights in Zuccotti Park. That was fantastic. A great experience. I saw people there I hadn't seen for 20 years.
Right.
And I really felt like I was one of the older people there.
Well, we were. We are the older people.
And I really enjoyed seeing all these youngsters completely ahead of where I was when I was young in terms of understanding the concept of equality, of man-woman equality, of all young equality, of racial and spiritual equality. And I loved seeing that in so many people. And then I came back to Santa Fe, and we took the park here, and I set up there for a week. I set up at Occupy Santa Fe, and I held workshops. I had held children's workshops on putting up teepees, putting up tents, putting up yurts, and putting up tarps. And I remember really distinctively people younger than me coming with their 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds. And bringing them to this occupied space in Santa Fe and saying, I want you to see this. And I took these 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds, and we put up the teepee, and we put up the tent, and we put up the yurt. And these kids were thrilled. And their parents were doing the explaining to them about how you can't expect the banks, the corporations, and the government to give you an equal society and a just society. You have to make it yourself, kids. And it was a thrilling moment.
And that energy is still there. The media wants to portray young people as slackers, selfish and materialistic, and they're not.
It's not the case. The young people of today are, they're going to take it the next step. I was talking with some young people, and they said, "Yeah, boomers. What did you do?" And I say, let me tell you something. We did not fix the world, but I'll tell you this. When we came onto the stage, nobody even knew what the word ecology meant. When we came onto the stage in the southern part of this country, there were separate restrooms for blacks and whites. When we came onto the stage, there were no women in the House and in the Senate. When we came onto the stage, and I gave this long list of this kind of stuff, we did not fix it. No, we did not fulfill our dreams, but we took it a whole number of steps.
Well,
now,
a great deal of our generation did our best. We did not, so we're not perfect, but we did our best. I mean, I know you, you know me, we've done a lot of stuff, and most of the stuff we did was because it needed to be done, and B, it was fun doing. I mean, you and I and all our cadre in New York, we basically, all those potluck dinners we did at 13th Street, they were fun.
Yeah. Absolutely. And here's another example. We took a few community gardens and we instilled into them a children's gardening program. And right now, children's gardening is in most of the schools
in New York City. They get a good 80%. Yes.
It's in Podunk and Boise.
You're talking about around the country. Yes, it's
all
right.
over the country.
Yep.
It's understood that young people having a garden on the school grounds or next door is an educational outdoor science lab. It teaches community and it teaches the connection with the earth, and it gets kids higher science test scores, and it teaches them to love and respect the plants, the flowers, and to understand where on earth your carrots and tomatoes come from.
Well, the problem is that the powers that shouldn't be, the hidden hand, is just hanging on by its fingernails, right? And so they're doubling down on, just look at the political structures, the economic structures, the unbelievable chaos that's being created. What's going on the border of the Ukraine, if that isn't wag the dog, I don't know what is. And back in the day, the general public in America would believe this bullshit. It's not like the bullshit that's going on right now is anything different than the bullshit about World War I or World War II or slavery or any of those things, but people kind of went along with it. Now they're not.
Well, it's the military industrialists that are making huge money off of these weapon systems,
right?
That promote this kind of stuff, and everybody'd have it so much better if we work together,
right?
But those kind of concepts are out there. They're out there in young Russia. They're out there in young China. They're certainly out there in Ukraine,
right?
I'll tell you, behind the Iron Curtain, before the Empire of Russia broke up, the strongest part of the Rainbow Gatherings was Ukrainian. There was a huge, and a lot of when the Iron Curtain went down, a lot of the Ukrainian rainbows migrated to Brooklyn, where they still are, and still participate in the Vermont gatherings and the Pennsylvania gatherings, all the gatherings that are near to New York. And, we are everywhere. And we are the new world culture, and that old world culture is going to fall, and the question is whether it crumbles and we end up standing among its dust, or whether it falls flat on top of us and crushes most of the world. Let's hope for the best.
Well, I don't think it's really, one reason I spent a good 10 years working in the corporate world, having a hedonist life in the O's, was that, after all 20-something years of being a social anti-war activist, environmental activist, and, I was on the technical side. I was part of an NGO in the United Nations that, was thinking of alternative technologies that were simple, that you could do. And it was mind-boggling because the real issues were never technological. They weren't even economical. They weren't even political. They were culturally and spiritual. And
absolutely, was ever thus.
Right.
I met one time with Percival Goodman, and Percy Goodman was an architect. He did the famous chapel at the Air Force Academy.
Yep.
And in 1948, with his brother, the psychologist, sociologist Paul Goodman,
Yep.
Paul and Percy wrote a book called Communitas.
Right.
And it mapped out for the very first time the concept of the ring city.
Right.
It wouldn't have to destroy the inner city. It was the first time any architect ever drew anything like that. And now it's being replicated around the world. And that was the model for the Whole Earth catalog, was the Communitas book.
Right.
And I went and saw Percival. And I was talking to him, this is in the early 1980s. And he was 90 years old and still a professor at Columbia teaching architecture. And a great influence on Michelle, David's partner.
Right.
David Boyle's partner, the architect, Michelle, was greatly influenced by Percival Goodman's teachings. And I went and I saw him and I said, oh, I'm so excited. We have so many great ideas. We have all these ideas about organic agriculture and 3-story agriculture. And we have ideas about telecommunications. And we have ideas about solar power and wind power and tidal power. And I went on and on. He let me run it all out like till the ball of yarn was done. And he said, my boy, humans have always had the technology
Right.
to live in peace and prosperity.
No kidding.
It's not the technology we need, it's a change in the human culture.
Right. So that's and the human culture. The other interesting about human culture is that humans want to do the right thing. They're not selfish. People go, "Oh, humans suck. They're all selfish and blah blah." No, basically, the Rainbow Gathering is made up of human beings, and all those human beings aren't any different than all the other human beings around. There's some real drainbows, there's some real road dogs, but virtually 89 to 92% of everyone at a Rainbow Gathering wants to be the good. Yes, wants to be that, and they realize. One of the things I did at gatherings was to pick up the drainbows, bring them to a kitchen, and show them it's more fun to cut carrots than to try to steal them.
Exactly. Listen, I've got to concentrate on driving. I'm heading into the town of Tucson. I'm driving a trailer. I better jump off. This has been a fantastic podcast with you.
So
it's been a terrific conversation. I love every moment chatting with you. I can't get enough, but I am going to have to jump off.
Okay, that's no problem. Go and listen to this show. Tomorrow it will be up on Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob. And it is. I did this because this is the first step in the next thing we're going to do.
Excellent. Nothing should be the last step. Onward, as they said on the old bus, further.
Yep, further.
Right, my good brother. Good night. Fuck all the listeners.
Okay, buddy. Catch you later. So that was Garrick Beck. And that's Julian Beck's son and Judith Molina's son. And they were the two founders of the Living Theater. And that was a community. All the stories I tell of all the different people I was with is because these people were my cadre, my family, my feral family, who was all about control and power and stuff. And, the American wet dream of the ego, not so much. These folks were, I mean, you can listen to Garrick, you can listen to me. I got an ego, he has an ego, but we're always there to serve the better purpose, right? We're always there in the we and me. And that's why, the Rainbow Gathering is full of, just like I said, regular human beings, but the 98% want to do the right thing. They realize they've come, and everyone calls it Babylon. Oh, but they come to not get away from it, but to like have an experience that charges their battery. So when they go back to their job, back to that, they can be their better self, right? And so my new image of being bare chested is to be without any tactile threads of that materialism. Of course we live in a material world. Of course we are being this, but we don't have to give in to being a slave. We don't have to comply to being sociopathic. Just because we live in a sociopathic society doesn't mean we have to be sociopaths, right? The power of fear drives us to have that, we have these two hemispheres of our brain, and fear draws that line down. And yes, one side can be that angelic, sweet person, and the other side, not so much. So that was fun. Let's see who else we can call up and talk to. This is my new style, but it seemed to like it. It's 3 people gave thumbs up. That's good, but do. Oh, I wonder if Jody will pick up. Now, Jody's a guy I've known for 50 years, and he is one of the folks of we came to Tribeca and Soho together.
Hi, this is Jody Intermont.
Yep, it's not there. And so we all were tradespeople. He was a plumber, I'm an electrician. Willie was the carpenter, Bariah was the mason. But we were all artists, we were all painters or sculptors or whatever we did. And so we, I kind of had a higher end of my clientele because I was working for these amazing, Grandpa Stahl and Mike Stahl. And I started when I was 9. So when I met these guys, I was like, 20, right? And Jody was going to Cooper Union. And I was sent to Cooper Union by Mike and Grandpa to, experience the electric, because they already taught me electrical engineering, And so I went, and Cooper was not like NYU or Columbia or Cornell or MIT. They were all schools that, I would end up going to and being part of. But again, not as a matriculating student, but as a research assistant or a person who went in being paid by some other entity. That's when I was my itinerant scholar self. But I went to Cooper, and Cooper was an amazing school. It was started up by this guy. I forgot what it was, Cooper Union. And Cooper was a guy who invented some little gizmo for steam engines on railroads just as America was going into the industrial age. He made a fortune out of that little gizmo, right? And the woman was an English landscape painter, and she was one of the top ones and made a lot of money doing those paintings for the rich, people who had a lot of money from being the gilded class, and that's why she was in America. So they had, accumulated quite a fortune, and he was a really good investor. And I think he had I think his brother was a corporate lawyer. And so they made, in the first 15 years of their, union, that's why they called it Cooper Union. Well, she was union. And so anyway, they started a school that was an art school, an engineering school, and an architectural school. And when you went into that school, and so they had so much money, they put all their cash and endowed this school, right? And they had a lot of real estate in the Lower East Side. And They built the school, and it was done before the Civil War. And Lincoln gave one of his major speeches that got him to be president in Cooper, in a big Cooper Hall. And it was one of the bigger halls in New York City at the time. And so we went, and that's where I met Jody and a whole bunch of other guys and gals. And that stayed my friends, for 50 years. So I'm still in tight with a lot of them. Definitely Jody. Jody, and I went down to Tribeca. First I was in Soho before I even went to Cooper Union. And before that, I was in the Lower East Side, being the master electrician at the Fillmore East. And if you go see a movie called Across the Universe, that movie takes place in the mid 60s to the early 70s, and it really captures what Lower East Side at that time, between 1964 and 1972, was like Berkeley. It was like Haight-Ashbury. It was like where Earth People's Park was, and it was an amazing place because there were all these like buildings and apartments that were like unbelievably cheap. And the oil embargo, see, that was a whole scam. If you go to one person who has a nice historical sense of what that was, at least a chunk of it, is surely Graceful. That lady, she does she's one of the best YouTubers I know. Really, really great. And another great one is, dark journalism. Another one is Max Igon. Max is now he left Australia because they were going to put him under the ground, and somebody grabbed him and took him to Mexico just in the nick of time. And now he's not as aggro, and he's talking about the important things. Let's see what he has to talk about. Whoops. Okay. Boom, bing, bing, bing. Boom, 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 boom. Boop, 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 boop. Here we go. This is a.
Many people are not aware they carry divine power within them. Some things you're going to go through, you can overcome by unleashing the miraculous power lying dormant within you. And it just takes a simple shift, you see.
A simple shift.
What's really going on here? Because nothing is what we've been told. I mean, that's a given. But what is really going on here? And this is a question that I think most people ask at some stage in their lives. It is the question that initially sends you down the rabbit hole. And there are so many rabbit holes to go down. But there is some point in most people's life where they simply look around them and say, is this all there is? There's got to be something more to this. And is everything that I've been told true? And that's what starts people off on their journey of enlightenment, if that's what you can call it. The journey of discovery, anyway. What is this place really, and how did we really get here? What are we? Where are we? Where did we come from? And the thing is, folks, with even asking a question like that, I mean, it's anybody's guess, and all we can do is speculate. But I think it's important that we do speculate because, as I said, things are certainly not the same. And this is something that I tried to touch on in the book that I put out in 2005, Earth's Forbidden Secrets, when I just pointed out in that book that everything we've been told about history is wrong. And I make that statement with absolutely no hesitation at all, simply because when you go out and look around the world, you find that nothing can be explained by the current timeline of history that we're given. And how we got here is really a very interesting question to ponder. How we got here as far as the control system goes is, of course, someone had an idea, put it into motion, and here we are. But when you look at the control system and you look at what we've really done since the Industrial Revolution, if you will, it's really quite miraculous. It really is. Even when you look at what we've done in the last 30 or 40 years, technology has simply snowballed some of the technology we're using now is stuff that was never dreamt of when I was a child. It was all science fiction when I was a child. This was stuff out of Flash Gordon and bizarre comic books. But even Flash Gordon and some of the bizarre comic books didn't have the stuff that we've got now. It's really come out of nowhere, and it's snowballed to such an extreme.
And the technology we have now is like 1/100th of what really exists. He is not putting into context that, they had technology, in the 1700s that was beyond what we have now. Yeah, there's a friend of mine who we'll talk with in the weekend. He's busy now, but he has a YouTube that the Tartarian culture, the mud flood, and he really goes. He's really great, and I'm gonna, he'll be on, and we'll have a conversation just like we had with Garrick, and and Max, he is touching on the quintessential sociological and spiritual point of view. It's like, is this all there is? A bigger house, bigger car, more consumption. Is this all there is? Right? And here's someone's calling in. Oh, there he is. It's the man, Jody. Hey, Jude. Jody.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. I'm live on my Dreamy Dreamland with Sensei Al Bob, and my new little thrust is to call people up who I've known forever and start talking about shit.
Oh my God.
So I didn't give you any of like any secrets of who you are, but I was saying that I got to know you when you were going to Cooper, right? And you and your sweetie were in that loft on Duane or Reed? Reed or Duane? I always forget.
Reed, and not Cooper Union, but City College.
City College. And you were going to be an architect and artist, and we met, and we were like some of the first people who were doing the Soho Tribeca thing. What year was that? That was like 70 or 69?
71.
71. So
yeah,
that was pretty early on. And the oil embargo really hadn't hit like what it did to New York. I mean, New York was still riding.
oil embargo's like way in the future.
Right.
But when we met, I was just in that first law. It's like I'm a sophomore in college, and I don't know, you had been in college a couple of years at that point.
Right.
I kind of lost a year in the transition there. So.
Right. And I bailed. I was already doing what I was supposed to be learning. I was already working in theaters, and I was supposed to be learning what I already did. And I already was doing it, 8 years before. I was already an electrician. Do you remember Mike Stahl? You remember Stahl Electric, which was...
Sure. Yeah.
So that's who I started working for.
Still on Reed Street, Mike Stahl and his large blonde wife, at least 4 years ago. I still would see her around. Remember, they had twins, and he just always lived in that loft on Reed Street.
Well, that was Mike's nephew. That was not. It was Grandpa Stahl.
That was not the dad, right?
Right. That was his nephew, and he died. I mean, Grandpa Stahl died at night. When I worked for them, my job was to make sure Grandpa Stahl didn't walk in front of a bus. And
I just spent like a funny couple of maybe 45 minutes trying to find an electrician for somebody, and Tommy O'Day turned it down, and Wick O'Brien turned it down, and Mike Hamilton turned it down. I don't know if any of these names mean
anything. Yes, they were around. Yes.
They were all around. Yeah. And now there's a guy, Ray Sage, who's younger, who might pick up on, like, when people are always asking me who's an electrician I can use. And I say Uncle Albie, but he doesn't come cheap. You got to give him a room in your house,
right?
And feed him 3 meals a day for a year or so, and he'll get around to your project, maybe.
but he'll do a good job, better than anybody else.
Oh yeah, always do a good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, you taught me electrical work.
Yes,
So,
yes. I think I taught everyone electric work. But yes, and he, the amazing thing about Joe, he still has the shop that we had together. It was his shop. He just gave me the memorial closet. It was underneath, and it was underneath. It was so old school. It was underneath the sidewalk.
but that was back in the day when the sidewalks were made out of cast iron with those little quartz circles in them, so you could still get some light. And lots of rain.
Yes, well, you'd have to get, you'd have to run between the. We tried everything to insulate those things so it wouldn't rain on us, because it was a soggy basement, that's for sure.
It's now very dry.
Oh, because they poured concrete over everything.
Put in like $1 million sidewalk project.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So we were down in Tribeca, down at the other end near Chamber Street, right off of Varick. That kind was on the backside of the World Trade Center, and when
just to pinpoint it in time,
right.
The Trade Center was when I met Albert. The Trade Centers were built,
but not.
They were still putting the skin on the Tower 2, which
right.
was the one on the left looking downtown.
Right.
And they hadn't gotten up much beyond like the 80th floor. They still had a ways to go.
Right. So they were still. And when I pretend, the boys, the stall sent me to the Union, and I worked 6 months on those buildings, like. Those buildings were made, like prefabbed. Everything they just kind of delivered, like the outside walls, and the big crane on top would lift it up, put it in there, and they would do a floor every 3 days.
That's why it came down so easy.
No, the reason it came down. Now the building it was designed never to come down. I mean, it had a load. The whole outside of the building was a cage. And there were no columns on the inside. Those things were, they came down because of some artificial mechanism, that what didn't have anything to do with the airplane, because jet fuel would not go through like 6-inch, steel. It wasn't some flimsy little thing like your Lowe's store. Those floors were 4 foot thick of stressed concrete and blankets of rebar, and no, it didn't. And you look at that video that gets played over and over, the building was turned to dust. No big chunks, dust.
Well, there was a lot of big chunks. I watched them for 6 months.
Yeah, being pulled out of the basement.
After dumpster of steel, just beams and.
Right, but that was
and
nothing.
I watched that pile.
Right,
with my dog every night.
Right.
Watch the pile diminish a little bit each day.
Yeah, but that pile.
There's a lot of crap there.
Yes, there was, but the things were, 100 stories high, meaning the volume of everything was not equal to what was in the ground in that hole in that pile.
Yeah.
Because
wait. Can I ask you a question unrelated to all this early Tribeca, but it'll take you over to the east side, which maybe you want to go to.
Yeah.
I'll give a name here. Al Diaz. Does that ring a bell?
Yes. Where does he do? I've heard that. Was he a person like us, or was he more a businessman? Or where did I hear that?
He was involved with SAMO. With
yes,
Jean-Michel
Basquiat. Yes, okay, that's why I know that name.
And they were kind of a group that was SAMO, right?
Yes.
There was a couple of so I just read this article about him in some local paper, and he's still making graffiti.
Well,
I
okay.
remember you hooked me up with him. He worked as a plumber for
right.
a while.
Yes. Okay.
For me.
Yes, I got you. You just revived.
I was trying to figure out if that was the same guy.
Same guy. Yep.
So he kicked his heroin habit. And he's clean and doing things.
Right. So Samo and Keith Haring were definitely. All those people who became well-known names were guys who were driven to do their thing. And the theory of 10,000 hours, that, like the Beatles, like anybody who became world famous, they put 10,000 hours into doing the thing that they were passionate about. Whereas the rest of us, we had a passion to do it, but not to put in the 10,000 hours because we had other things in our life that we wanted to do.
Yeah.
And you did a great thing by having a family. Your greatest piece of artwork are your kids.
Well, I think I did the 4,000 hour artwork.
Right. Not the 10,000. Yes. Right.
Not the 10,000.
Right. Same.
The course for dummies.
Right. Same with me with photography. And once I hooked up with Donna, have you watched her career?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the coffee table books and the CBGB's years and stuff like that.
Right. So
she's documented a lot of scenarios.
What's really interesting is that if you go on her Wikipedia page, her life seems to have started in 1980, the year after we got divorced, Because she,
none
of that DNA. Yeah, DNA. Yeah. So, you remember that little shop I had on 21st Street? That was our museum. We put all our art in the windows.
Kinda.
It was right across the street from where that tennis bubble was. On 6th Avenue.
Over there, yeah.
Right.
Oh, right. Forgot about that tennis ball. That's a while back.
That's a while back. And do you remember my helper, Detlef Paul?
Sure.
Yes. So he was a trip. And his father, did you ever meet his father when Howard, that's how I met Detlef. Howard got him to be his Nazi to build his
Howard Grant.
Yeah, Howard Grant. When he did that building over on West Street, was not West. What street was his building on?
It was on Greenwich.
Greenwich, right. Do you remember that? He was a really gigantic guy, and he was a Nazi. I mean, he was an actual Nazi, yes. And he was, everything had to be done his way, and his way was pretty good. He always built a table, which was. Did you ever get into that? He taught me, he forced me to have a table, which was great. He had edges on it so you could put all your parts and stuff and you wouldn't lose your tools. It would always be on the table.
Yeah, I do that now.
Yeah, yes. So that's kind of where I got into that one. But his son, who was rebelling against his father, I said, I'm going to teach your son how to be an electrician. And that guy got a license. That kid got a license. So, I must have taught him pretty well, but he lived his father threw him out. So he lived in that place. And I don't know if you remember ever going in I rented the whole front of that about 20 feet from the front window. And that whole front was about, 60 feet wide. So I rented the whole thing for $200. And from floor to the ceiling was 30 feet, really high ceiling. So I built floors with 2x3 steel studs. And I had my crimper and I made it geometric. So as long as those studs didn't turn, they could hold a load of a ton, right? But once the steel stud turned, that was it. It would fall apart. But he lived in the upper floors of that. So that was kind of fun. So what was that?
This is after you came back from Australia?
No, before Australia.
Oh, yeah.
And that's
Donna
why
on the scene at that point or no?
No, Donna was there. No. I met Donna when I was in Williamsburg. So, that was 1976. I moved.
I thought Williamsburg was before and after Australia.
It was. So we went to Australia in end of 77, right on December or January. So we were there 77, 78, 79, and came back 80. And so, and she went to San Francisco. I went to New York, and I got off the airplane, took a cab, and I went to all the keys fit. All the doors were like the guy who I rented, remember the key fee for lofts? You had a loft and you couldn't rent it to the person, but you could sell that key for like $5,000. I did that. So I sold that guy the key and I said, listen, no one will ever know you're here. when they start putting posters on your door that they know you're here, they don't. And he turned himself in. And yes, he turned him for, he was like a white boy from the Midwest, and he freaked out. So he let Con Ed, and they didn't even know where the meter to that floor was. And when they found it, they said, "No one's paid this electric bill since 1940. You owe us," And so, he when I got there, he wasn't there. But all my stuff was there. All the keys worked. I got there Saturday.
And the electric was still on.
It's still, the electricity was still on, and I never paid.
Here's what I wonder about. In the bathroom in that place,
yes,
you had a window that looked at the Empire State Building.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And under the window was a sign that said, "Do not flush any fiscal matter."
Right.
What is that, like bank draft?
Yeah, no bank. Yes.
You're wiping your ass with
yes.
bank draft?
With
no fiscal matter.
No fiscal matter, yes. I mean, that whole place was like that because the only drain that was there.
That place wasn't half as good as the one that had like a 3rd-degree fire, and every single thing in it was made out of charcoal.
Yes, that
Lower East Side.
Yes, 13th Street. Lucky, we called that Lucky 13.
And you had to put like paper down so you could walk on the floor.
Yeah,
getting charcoal.
Right, and we'd paint over it, and when the paper would break, we'd put more paper on top of it. And after about the second year, so you came up there. I probably was there, maybe a month or so.
I think you cooked Helene and me a meal.
Oh, yeah. I had those, those wild, crazy potluck dinner every Friday night where all the, art intelligentsia came, And, but a lot of folks, in those days, that neck of the woods was a little dangerous,
Oh, yeah, very. Like never going over there with my car.
Right, exactly.
Steal your tape deck.
Or or you come back and you have no wheels. My nephews came to visit. I did a show in Carnegie Hall, and they wanted it was some band that they liked, and I put them right on the stage, and then they came back, and there were all these like who's the guy? Guy from the Velvet Underground, John Cale was my buddy. And so they couldn't believe that people like him were in that place and having, drinking and smoking and just having a grand old time. And these kids got blasted. And so when they woke up in the morning, I was not waking up. And they always, as they got blasted, is it okay about our car? Is it okay about our car? And so when they went down, there was a homeless guy sleeping in it. And they came back and they said, "Wake up, there's a homeless guy." I said, No. I paid him $5 to sleep in your car so no one would steal it. And, that was the Lower East Side in those times. So did you hang out in the Lower East Side in the 60s?
I wasn't even here.
Where were you?
I was upstate, man.
Oh, yes, you come from the upstate, yes. What part of the upstate?
Harriman, Central Valley.
Oh. So did you, Harriman State Park and Bear Mountain?
Yeah, I worked at those places in high school. It was a greedy.
So yes. And so I was, when I was in the Union had this thing called the Boys Athletic League. And there's a lake. There were a few lakes up near Bear Mountain. You remember those? You drove up from the New York Thruway, that road that kind of went up towards Bear Mountain.
Well, there's lots of Seven Lakes Parkway is one of those.
That's it. The Seven Lakes, and on the back side of it is where the Army has their West Point is right there.
Yep.
And so,
I gotta tell you, when I was, I had 2 or 3 West Point things. One is when I was in kindergarten. My kindergarten teacher was actually, her husband had been a friend of Eisenhower. Eisenhower was coming. He was president at the time.
Right.
He was coming up to West Point to greet the graduates.
the boys.
And my kindergarten teacher, who liked me and this kid named Eddie, she invited us to go meet the president.
Holy moly.
And I said, nah. All the papers. And I didn't know what the president even was. I was like,
Right.
I'm going to play in the mud.
Right.
I don't want to give up my Saturday for that.
Well, you were right. You made the right choice.
But then in our town, Central Valley, had a military reservation that backed up on the golf course.
Right.
That was called Proctoria.
Yeah.
And that's where they had all the fake battles.
Yes.
So they had all the National Guard would come there and they'd fight against the army.
Yep.
And they all had blank bullets and they'd camp out on. It was very World War II-y.
Yeah.
You know? And we would, kids would go up into the woods after the maneuvers were over, find all kinds of cool, sometimes rifles, sometimes, just abandoned stuff.
Yep. Camping equipment.
That
Yep.
Proctoria went from Central Valley all the way up the side of that mountain to where it sort of joined West Point.
Right.
And at West Point, that was the shooting range.
Yes. And that our
And
camp.
I got to go to a thing when I was in high school where they brought out tanks with rocket launchers.
Right.
And they, people sat in the bleachers and they said, this is the new AT-37-12. And that, train your binoculars on that red flag on that mountain 6 miles over. And they blow it up.
Right. Well, they were looking for a cannon fodder, get you, wow, I want to do that. Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, but yes.
Now they're looking for cannon fodder again. They got 8,500 guys that all they got to do is ship them over there and get them blown up.
And that's what is going to happen.
Syria.
Yep, that's
so
what's.
that we can then join some horrible world war.
Yep,
because they killed 8,500 of our guys.
Right. Yep, exactly. And hopefully, I have a real sense that the general population isn't going to go for that. After Korea, after Vietnam, after all the other shit, after Iraq, and they just lied straight face to everyone, right to our face, and our media just parroted it on. There was no free media; it's a corporate media. I'm pretty sure. I mean, you're a conservative guy, and you just made that statement.
Well, I've been around for a little while.
Can you believe we're in our 70s?
Yeah, it's kind of grasp.
When I met you, we were in our 20s. We were just barely 20. It's like,
Indeed.
yes. But we had a good time,
Oh, well, what was so cool about Tribeca back then was that it was very democratic. You would have a friend, you'd meet, in the bar, you'd meet here or there, and have common interests, and you'd be hanging out together. And, 6 years later, you'd find out that person had a trust fund that was worth $35 million, but they didn't play it up, or you never heard about it. It was just like, I wonder why that guy never worked.
Right.
He was always just in his studio making art.
Right, exactly. It's not like he was very successful. It's like, who is that guy? You made the stretchers and I made the lights. What was that guy's name? Ron Gorshev?
Oh, Ron Gorshoff, yeah.
He's a guy. That was him, Yeah. And guys like that who became popular, they became popular because they were that rich and their parents' friends would buy those paintings, from Ivan Karp for, $35,000, So it was like a total scam. Like, what's his name? Julian Schnabel, right? Did you ever hang with him?
Yeah, I did for a bit. He was on Main Street where we were.
Yeah, right.
But he was actually not rich at all. He just worked his ass off.
But he was connected.
Network guy.
He was connected.
Well, through, I don't know, Paul Cooper.
Yes.
Through gallery.
Right. And he had.
Ladies' man, a romancer.
He was a romancer,
Gallery.
a smoozer, the whole ball of wax. But what was interesting, what I liked
A
about
lot of people don't know about Schnabel. There was a point where I went to his loft on Reed Street, and he had a lot of paintings for sale for $50.
right,
It was in his first incarnation before
Right.
he was working at the Lower Manhattan Ocean Club
right,
as a chef,
right,
and he hadn't Island when he did those broken plate paintings. And he was breaking plates because he was so pissed at being a chef.
Right.
But earlier, he was doing these paintings which just failed miserably. And then he went back to Texas for like 4 years.
Right.
And then this woman from the Dia Art Foundation financed him to come back to New York. So it wasn't his parents, but it was his, it was the art people in the world.
Right.
But back when he was the first incarnation, he was painting like, I remember the painting I was thinking about a lot for $50 was these two dogs fucking in front of a church.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
By moonlight.
Yes, by the moonlight. That was a great painting.
All his paintings had this real good night sky, and they had dogs, and they had churches.
Yep. He was a good Catholic boy. And the
I think every bit of that's been destroyed. He never talks about that. You don't see it in the art magazines.
So, do you remember John, my buddy John? He wore glasses. He had a loft on.
John Moss?
No, the other John. John, it starts with a B. And he had a nice wife.
Oh, yeah. It's like a German name, like Bauer.
Right. Bowman.
Right.
Jody, when you put your half of a brain with my half of a brain, we got some kind of remembrance of things. There was a part
that's how I maintain my plumbing license. I have another plumber friend, and we call each other all the time.
Right.
Do you remember this part of the code? This thing? Can you do that thing?
Right.
You can't. It's a collective idea.
Yes, it's a collective thing. Yes, but John Bowman. So he took off. He was selling it, and then, and I had a dream. One of the reasons I call you is I had a really interesting dream last night, and that was, you've known me almost 50 years now. My life, like your life, has been on this track. We almost had a parallel track. We were both tradesmen, artists, in New York. We were, in the beginning of all of that and saw all of that and knew all these people who became famous that they were our buddies, and we hung out with them and did stuff. And the major thing about me is I would get a job and I would get a nice big chunk of change, and I would leave New York for anywhere from 3 months to a year or 2 or 3, right? And then I come back and I could just step right back into it. And that, being able to step back into it, gave me the freedom to go off and do all these other things. And when I did those other things, I had opportunities where if I went off my track and went in that direction, I would be a different guy than I am today.
When you would come back, I remember you told me one time, I was like hard up for work and there was nothing going on. You said, just pick a sunny day and walk up West Broadway from Canal Street to Houston Street. You're going to run into one person who needs a plumber that day. And it seemed to work. I tried that out a couple times. It always did seem to work.
Yep, it should work for me. My other thing was I could go hang out. There were 4 major, you remember Vica Electric, Frank? Vica?
Yeah,
right.
Sure.
And there was another one, a shop like that was right on Union Square, right where Broadway came.
No, not Eagle.
It was right near 16th, 17th Street on Union Square, right there. That was another big house. And then there was a really,
G&G?
It might have been that. It was right there on whatever. It was the only really, the real deal electric supplies for like bike was.
G&G is still there. It's on 17th Street. Like
right on the corner of the park?
No, not quite. It's sort of in the middle of the block.
Well, anyway, I can't swear to exactly where it was, but it was right around there. And I would just hang in there, and people would come in, look all frazzled, and I said, "So what's your problem?" I can't. Well, I think I can help. And that's how I met Andy Warhol, because his factory was just down the street. And this guy comes running in, "I need electricity, and the guy who owned the place looked around and he pointed to me. And the guy came, "Yes, you got to come with me." I went in there, and Andy Warhol, he had this.
You met him through Rupert, who was your neighbor up.
Well, I kept meeting him in different ways in different places because Andy Warhol was ubiquitous. He was everywhere. Every party, every little nook and cranny. Yes, I met him many times, but the first time I met him was when I went in there, and his, he had that place. All the people in Soho were having a hard time because this,
Factory.
yes, he called it a fact. He was a smart guy. All of us who lived, I lived on that. Did you ever see my loft on Worcester Street?
The one that was
It was right, where Spring and Worcester hit, and food was there, and you went down two buildings on the, I guess, let's see what side. That would be the east side of Worcester Street. Big building, big windows.
I remember a place you lived in that you had a bed on top of a pile of sheetrock.
Yes. Well, that was a job site. I did that a lot. Remember that? Remember that building on Broadway that was next to the Broadway Central Hotel?
Yeah.
And it collapsed, and we thought it was an earthquake, and the dust fell off the sprinkler pipes. And we smoked another joint and drank another beer and walked out, and all of the
We
hotel.
also saw the Pope from that same window.
Yes, that was surreal.
Earlier that summer.
Yes.
That was Al Held's ex-wife, and her name was Sylvia. She was a painter.
Yes.
I don't know how you would always find these jobs and then drag me in on them.
Right. Well,
Follow you around.
we were a team, and then we had Willie and we had Gary Blue, the spray painter. Remember him?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. Whatever happened to Gary?
I do not know.
Because he,
Not in great health back then.
well, he, he just, spraying lead-based paint, never a good idea. And he did, sanding floors, and he was a great painter. He should have just stuck at that.
Yeah.
So, but
Well, it's hard to do that if nobody pays you to do it.
right. And
Hey, I might have to go to commercial break because I've been walking the dog while I was talking to you, and I got to go back through the elevator tunnel and lose the signal.
okay,
It's freezing out there. It's like 17 out. Sitting warm.
I've been stuck up here at the school for 12 days now.
Oh, what are the roads iced up?
Well, you came up to the castle. You came up to the school.
Sure, yeah.
So my driveway is about 2 miles to where I am, right? And it's 6 inches
We
of
would call that a logging trail.
yes. That's what it was, like a stream bed, really, is what it is. And it basically, we got 10 inches up here, and then it went to 8 degrees for 5 days straight. And the sun would come out and melt a little snow on top. So it's now about 6 to 4 inches of solid ice.
And what's the heating now? Is it still wood or is it?
No. The guy who, he's got electric heaters everywhere. His electric bill for this month is probably
Is this
going to be
John Boy?
Yeah, John Boy. Yeah.
So he's actually got electric heating?
Oh yeah.
Oh, cool.
Well,
No solar?
no, I wanted, that I set it up so the wood, he did this whole, the whole thing was concrete and stone. And
Right.
we put a big wood stove downstairs, and you get that cooking, it heated the whole freaking, but he's like, blah, 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 blah. He likes just turning the switch. And his mommy, daddy paid the bills, so he's not worrying about it. So,
Very good.
and so, this is I came here, 2 weeks before Thanksgiving. And my real deal is I'm tying up all the loose ends. It's like when I left New York, I kept leaving New York and coming back, coming
Oh,
back.
wait. Speaking of loose ends,
Right.
you told me if I did a certain thing, everything by Sunday was going to change for me.
Right?
I tried to keep a positive attitude. I'm not sure it worked. How'd it work for you?
Okay, you know me. It worked. And anyway, it's a long-term thing. We won't really know until the end of the year. But it's just the beginning of the positive attitude. You got to
Gotcha.
keep up.
It's like, bing.
Yeah, it's not just one shot at this. You have to kind of keep up with the do your best, be your best. Know your 20. Conscious intent, conscious awareness. You do that because 2020 is going to be a really amazing freaking year. You and I got about 20 years left in us. I crept back from the dead. And so I got another 20. And this year is
I hope so. I hope we both do.
we both do. You've always been, your gene stock is, and my gene stock, everyone has issues, but they live to be 100. They might wish they didn't, but they lived to be 100. My grandma lived to be 100. My mom lived to be 103. My dad lived to be 98. So yes, and they all had and I took care of those guys for 28 years, and I should have been smarter. Yeah, I went to all their doctor appointments with them. I kept all the notes. I have everything they have, right? And probably worse because I was 200 pounds overweight. So, but 2022 is, if we work our best to do our best, to know our conscious intent and our conscious awareness, it'll the next 20 years will be just amazing, and everything's going to work out because you and I, we saw when people go on about how bad it is now, it's like, forget about it. It's so much. I mean, New York City in the 70s, do you remember when I lived down in the Bowery, where the park is, and they have all those little circles of grass that have, the cast iron fences around? And I camped out. The city didn't pay for mowing the lawn for half a decade. And so the grass and those things grew up. And a friend of mine, we were sitting on a park bench, and he went over, and the little door that they had to get into there to mow the lawn, there was no lock. He said, "You live here." And we went and bought some scissors, and we just clipped a little path around, and there was a street light right there. I opened it up, put a piece of roll next to, I had a tent, I had a TV, a refrigerator, an air conditioner, and no one.
I missed that phase.
Yes. Do you remember when I lived on Pearl Street?
Wait a minute. Before you go to too many other spots, I'm going down this hallway where I lose the signal.
Okay.
But I got to get back in the house.
Okay. So did you talk to about the regrouping of you and Miss H? Like maybe change something?
I'm not going there right this minute.
Okay. Okay. But just always approach it with the best of intentions, and it'll work out.
I will do that.
Yes. Okay. And your kids and your grandkids are the joy of your life?
They are pretty much fun. They're pretty cool kids, yes.
So James he's like in the neighborhood now. Do you see him more?
You see him a lot anyway.
Huh.
For some reason, my kids see each other like 50 times a year.
Right. Well, that's good. See, I mean, that's what you chose. You chose a good thing. That family, to have those memories, to do all that stuff you did. All those, got that house and you went skiing all those years. I mean, most people don't have those kind of memories.
Yeah, that was pretty cool stuff.
Yes, it was very cool stuff.
We did it that time.
Do you remember the picture I took of you and your kids leaning against my building, and the light was just hitting you, and you guys all looked like this amazing, like you were a punk band or something?
I'm not sure about this one. Which building? Long Island.
Yeah, the one in Long Island. Yeah.
Maybe in the front entryway.
Yeah, in that big whole front window, and
That's probably just Viv. Maybe James is a baby in there too. I'm not sure.
No, I guess it wasn't that, because when you went and saw that building, Viv was a baby.
Yeah.
So they were, Viv was like 6 and James was, I don't know, 4 or something. What is he, 2 years younger than Viv?
4.
Yeah, 4. So yeah, she was maybe 8 and he was 4. But they looked cool. I guess it was in New York, but it was someplace in front of the building, and the sunlight was just coming just right, and it lit you guys up amazing, like Italian light. It was like, it's one of my, I thought, pretty much every picture I took of someone I knew, I gave them that picture. That was part of my photo gig.
We have it somewhere.
Yeah, you have it somewhere. Okay, handsome. Always good talking to you. I love you. Say hi to the family.
Will do.
Okay. Talk to you later. So this is fun, to back my stories up with actual human beings. But there's nobody here. It's almost 2 hours. It's almost 11. I thought we'd have a big crew, but no one's even chatting. You missed. You could have asked questions. Okay. Okay. Well, that 4 thumbs up. And hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to Dreamy Dreamland with your sensei, Al Bob. And I'm here as your griot telling your stories. And I'm, calling up. This is my new part of the show. I'm just going to keep calling up people and hearing them tell stories, right? So I thought you'd like this. And you can go back and, listen to these things. That's the beauty of the show. You don't have to hear it quite live. Right? Let's see. Where's our next guest? Oh, here we go. I think this is our last guest. There's one person there. Who's there? Anybody there? Anyone wants to chat? You can ask questions, And you see, I have so many people on my speed dial that we won't repeat our
9
guests.
7 0.
No, he's asleep or something. Anyway, so that's it. Since there's nobody here except one, so come on, is that just who's that one there? Have you given the thumbs up? Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this show. This was fun for me. I love talking to my buds. And they all have lives, so I don't always get a hold of them, and you've seen me try to dial a whole bunch of people that are just not there. And Jody, he at least came back, so, and we didn't even touch a 10th or even 1% of the stuff that we did, right? And what was interesting is that we were buds, and I was still doing all this other stuff. Like I just said, do you remember this place? You remember that place? And he had a life, I had a life. And we were, like I said, 2 blocks away was like being in another city. It was quite interesting. But we all, you heard him said, I always dragged him into jobs, what made him, because the jobs I did weren't just, fixing faucets. I got him jobs where he did, whole buildings and he had to go from, being the artist, because he used to do stuff like in the New York City code book, there's a thing called safe but inadequate, like temporary wiring is in that category. Safe, everything's fine, it works, it's safe, won't hurt you, but it's not up to code. And so we would be doing buildings in these, hey, Jane, and awesome interviews. I'm glad you're liking them. Yes. So Jane, do you have any stories like the ones you just heard? So I tell you all these stories, and I say, don't believe a word I say. And now I'm going back, and I decided to, interview folk who were at the stories I tell you about, right? So, and of course, they have their own, remembrance of what it is, but you get when you have more than, the good book says, when more than 2 come together in my name, there I am. So, that's what you're getting. You're getting this other experience of what it was, right? And that's the whole thing about memories. When I worked, for lawyers and worked in courts, and I would go to courts, and my job was to read people. I'd read everybody, the judge, the opposing lawyer, people on the jury, I'd read everyone. So the lawyers would know how to deal with the issue. And then I, did forensics investigation with their investigators. That's how I got into forensics, criminal forensics. That's how I work for the Bureau of Behavioral Investigation, the BBI. And so, and they had nothing to do with it. They were a private LLC, and entities like that are more professional, more, history, more data, more everything than like the FBI, because the FBI is institutional. And you heard Garrick talking, because Garrick, he was always like, his parents were revolutionaries, and Garrick was always, pushing the, you heard him tell the stories about going to court and all the rest. And I was the guy who would, be along with him and have the peripheral going. Rich history, definitely where yep. And I'm doing this because I used to have an amazing photo library of all these experiences. And I still do have, maybe a 10% of what I had. My father threw the other 90% away. I built him a house. I had a secret closet that I had all kinds of art of all these artists. I could have, retired on the stuff my father threw it all away. My house, I do what I want. And again, it was a real good, when he did that, I discovered that. So I built this amazing house for my father, right? And he said, you have to take care of it. No, I don't. I'm doing other stuff. So once I decided, okay, I'll do it. So we started a business together. I knew he'd fuck me like he fucked all my other brothers and sisters. And so I knew what instead of putting 40 years in, I only put 2.5. And I was, I got it all together and was moving forward. And then there was, the savings and loan crash. But we survived that very handsomely. And actually, we made money out of that. We bought low, right? And because I could, I could sign the checkbooks and there was, a good cash flow going through there, I bought a lot of stuff, did a lot of stuff. Anyway, one of the things we did was there was this town in Long Island called Remsenburg, and it was just below the Hamptons, right? And there was Remsenburg, and there's this other thing called Mauritius. And Remsenburg had all these houses and barns that were, revolutionary and pre-Civil War, and they were just falling apart. And we bought this whole big farm that had these two beautiful, amazing revolutionary houses that, the log floor was on the dirt, had no, right? And I got, because of the crash, all these guys who had contracting business or who were carpenters or plumbers, or they were like without work. And a lot of them ended up in jail, and a lot of them became drug addicts and alcoholics, and they couldn't get a job. And I freaking hired them all because they were amazing craftsmen, and no one would give them a break. I did. And I paid them pretty well. And I was very, I understood I worked with people like this my whole career. And so they would, they had no place to live. We'd live right on the construction site, right? They would, as soon as the sun came up, I'd have, the coffee and donuts, and we'd start working, and we'd work from like 6 a.m. till, about 2. And that's when I showed up with the booze and the beer, and they kicked back and still kind of work. But, by 3:30, they knew they shouldn't be working with power tools. But we would, in those periods of time, we would do more work than other crews would do in 3 and 4 days. And so the two pre-revolutionary houses, I lifted them up, moved them. We dug real, foundations and basements and put them down and jacked it up and kept those buildings just what they were, but made, put new plumbing in, new electrics, new heating. And so it still looked like this amazing pre-revolutionary house, but it had a real basement and a real foundation and would last another 200 years, put new roof on it. One house we did all new siding, but we used the kind of siding that was there. Instead of putting up aluminum siding, we went and got cedar shakes. So we did that and got good on those two houses. And then there were 4 barns. It was like a 40-acre farm, and so we took the buildings apart. And again, built real foundations and basements, and built the barns with new wood, new everything, new plywood, all of that. And then, put the site, made it look just like the old barn, but brand spanking new. And on the inside, we used all the old wood. We remilled. There were guys that I hired who were, they were cabinet workers, and they had all the milling tools, but their business was, and I basically went around. They had to like hock all of these amazing tools, and nobody wanted these old tools. Everything was like, made from, plastic. And these guys were the real deal cabinet. So we made everything right there on these sites. So after 2.5 years, and, I spent like a big chunk of change to buy this amazing piece of property. It was a farm in the Mauritius that was right on the Great South Bay. So it had the beach to the ocean, this big waterway, and 100 acres of farms. And we took, and on one end, there were all these 1960 General Electric prefab houses. They were really cool, and they were right on the water. But those were houses that the guys who worked in New York City and Brooklyn, like in the distillery, in the 50s and 60s, they were union guys. They were making really good money, so they bought themselves these little houses in Long Island. And then when the crash happened in 70, they lost everything, and they were old. And so the county and state took them and then put people on welfare in them who destroyed them, and then they were just crap. And I bought all of that for like less than $100,000, right? But bought the whole thing. And so we redid those houses, and on the upswing on the other side of the crash, that's when the the 80s, and that Greed is Good, that movie, and the Wall Street guys. And I sold each of those houses for more than $300,000, right? Well, I didn't. That was the plan. Before I could, what happened was, and I knew my father was going to fuck me. I just didn't quite know when. So I was doing all kinds of, I was still doing art in New York. I was doing the anti-nuclear thing. I was doing 100 different things. And so my father got really pissed because I was spending all this money and but the first 2 years, I rehabbed 5 buildings. And in the middle of the economic collapse, we had a rent roll of $42,000 a month. You'd think he'd be happy with that. No. And so because he had no idea what the fuck I was doing. I was never around, but the lawyer knew what I was doing. The accountant knew what I was doing. They kept saying to him, "Your son's a genius." And my father got very upset because it wasn't him being the genius, right? So, but he did have, he could pull the plug, which he did. And I knew he was going to do it. And when I worked really hard for almost 4 years doing this. And what happened, and I got, a salary of $500 a week, whoop-de-doo. But I, vehicles, houses, all kinds of things I could, have a good time in and monetize in other ways. And so not a problem. And I knew he was going to fuck me. So when I got this call from, and I had a little pager in those days before cell phones, they could send you a sentence, and it was wireless, right? Wireless pager. So I got this thing your father's in my office. You need to come here now. Come. So I did. And basically my dad was like, you can't, you don't have this, you don't do that. And I'm not in control. And I quit. And he said, "You're fired." I said, "Dad, I'm your partner. You can't fire me." And he said, "You didn't read it." And I said, "We didn't have I said I wanted a contract." And he said, "I'm your father. I won't fuck you." And I said, "Yes, you will. You fucked everybody else." He said, "Oh, no." And I said, "Here you are. 2.5 years later, you're fucking me." And okay. See you later. And I walked out. And our lawyer was his friend for a real long time. And the guy lost his shit on my father. And my father just wanted to get out of this, right? And so the guy bought it. My dad had maybe $300,000 into it, even less, 170. I mean, I think he bought it from the lawyer, bought it from $300,000. And I went back to New York, and I was already doing, I had a loft there, I had a business there, I had a whole bunch of shit going on, and that's what my dad got really pissed off, because I still had nothing to, I was running this business for him, and we were making real serious money, and we'd done some amazing things. But all of those crews, all those guys who couldn't get to work anyway, I made them a company, right? And I said, when my dad did that, I said, "Listen, I set this thing up so what we're doing has nothing to do with my father. He has no control over it. This is, a cooperative venture between you guys and me. And so I'm turning it all over to you guys. I have an LLC for this, and and I put you guys on that. And what I'm going to do is, I got all this work lined up. The lawyer has bought this business, and all the stuff that we had planned to do, we're still going to do. But instead of for me and my dad, you're going to do it for the lawyer, right? So, you're going to get paid even more because you were just getting a salary for this. Now you're going to get the lion's share of the profit of what you guys do. And they couldn't believe it. They were crying. They were hugging me because this gave them a new lease on life. Their families went to college. They didn't lose the house or the car. They didn't get divorced. They didn't end up in jail. And so I just left them there. And it was an amazing thing. And they're they're still in existence, that LLC. Anyway, so for 5 years, they gave me a nice check every freaking month. So I worked really hard for 2.5, 3 years and set all this up. And, for a good 15 years, I got a check from these guys every month. And the lawyer who bought everything for a nickel was sharp. He was a real estate lawyer. He knew what I did. He and I talked a lot. So I, went back to New York, did a bunch of stuff, did a big job. Got, a nice check. I went off to Ireland, came back about a year later. And, again, I still had the same pager, same phone number. Oh, look, who is there? And said, hey, I'm going to be in New York City. I'm going to be staying at this hotel. Let's have lunch tomorrow. Okay. So I did. And we had lunch and he just told me, he said, it's amazing. I turned around. I wanted to make you my partner, but you were gone. And I understand why you did that, why you left. And he goes, I understand everything you did because you really didn't want to do this. You set it up. So I, who do this all the time, you set up that construction company and they're paying you every month and they still don't know where you are. They just put it in your bank account. And he said, I want you to put this in he gave me an envelope. There's a check for quite a substantial. So he made $50 million out of my idea of what it was. And he gave me 3 different checks over the years that were quite substantial. And again, stayed really good friend where he wasn't that good of a friend of my dad lost one of his better friends. And so that's how, and people go, somebody asked me the other day, so why aren't you rich? Well, I am. I'm rich in my life's experience. I'm rich in friends. You've heard a few of my friends, right? I've known these guys 50 years. How many people do you know who have that kind of friend that you heard me talk to for 50 years? Those guys would do anything. And those are just 2. And earlier this afternoon, I had 2 people on. And I'm going to keep bringing whoever answers the phone, I will put on like I did, and we'll talk about things. Because I had this dream last night. Jane, I want you to think about this. So I had this dream, and I was telling my friend Jody, I had this dream, where it was back, I was still a young man, right? And I was on the track, as I was explaining to Jody, that we were parallel tracks, and we were going, artists, tradesmen, we did the same kind of thing, but he stayed with his nose on the grindstone and had kids and grandchildren and did very well and has nice investments and, he can retire on that. But still, we talked about it. And in 1988, when I left, I was, sitting in the basement there in our shop, and we were talking about this. And we both said, we've hit this certain level. We're doing millions of dollars of work, but we're still taking home. I mean, we have all these perks. We have all these, and yes, we got all this other stuff going on. But still, no matter how hard we work, we still only make 50 grand a year. Yes, we have other things that we're doing better on, and he was better at doing that than me because I always took whatever cash I had and then went to a place where that money went a long ways and stayed there a year or 2. And then I would come back. And so I had, Jody was an amazing, he is one of the best plumbers in New York City. So I got him, the jobs I would have were always restaurants and really rich people stuff. And I got him into that mindset of, these are the jobs you want, not the schlemiel guys that you have to run after to get the check. People who will value. And so he does. So, I mean, he does things for all the names in Wall Street, and these were my clients too. So he kind of got into that flow every time. That's one reason he said that I always dragged him into these great jobs. No, I put him there so I could leave and come back a year later. And I would just say, so what are we working on now, Jody? And as you heard him say, people can never find an electrician who knows what he's doing, right? And so I had that. That was my thing. Everyone, no matter what it cost, it was always cheaper to get me because the job would be amazing and done right the first time, right? And you never have to run after me. You never have to, because I would do one job at a time. Yes, I had all these young people who I was teaching to be an electrician. I'd send them out on the service jobs. We had a service because Grandpa Stoll had this big service business. Then he got old, and basically I kind of just absorbed his service business into my business. And Mike did these gigantic, skyscraper jobs, and he always got that's where I got most of my super fancy gigs, is through these things. People would buy these, $10 million condos and want the whole thing done. And I would go in there with Jody and me and Willie, and we had this crew, and we would turn out these art, because we're all artists. Their condo apartment would be a piece of art, and not many people do that anymore. And I'm, and nobody seems to want to do that anymore. No idea how it works, right? So I had this dream that Jody and I and a few other people were on these parallel tracks, and they stayed, and they never seemed to have where the tracks would switch like this. But I would go off, right? I'd go up to Ireland or go here or go there or spend years in Australia. And about 8 different places I went to, I could have stayed. I could have stayed with the old crone. I could have stayed with Archie. I mean, those are all Irish. I could stay with the doctor in Glendore, and I'd be a different guy. I mean, it would have probably been amazingly great too, because it was amazingly great with them, but I wouldn't have done all this other stuff that I've done up to this place, and that's, I had this dream, and Native Americans, the guys who were the hunters, they want to get up early in the morning, so they would drink a lot of water at around 4 a.m. They'd have to take a piss, so they'd be up. And I do a very similar thing. I drink one of these. I bought about a dozen, about 30 of these guys, and now I'm just filling up with water because our tap water is amazing. And I drink one of these. I drink about 8 of these a day, and about 6 of them I put like this much, apple cider vinegar in here, and does very good things for you. And it's an acquired taste, but once you get used to it, it's not bad. And so I drink one of those before I go to sleep, and I usually go to sleep like 11 o'clock, so it's around midnight. I go to sleep, and I'll wake up at 3, take a piss, and I go to sleep, and then I have. At that point, I've done all the other points of getting your body and brain into a place to have dreams that you can remember. And so I go back to bed. I say, okay, I'm going to remember this dream. Bang, I have a dream. So last night, I got up 7 times. And it was the same railroad, all of that, and all the different people that I could have ended up with, right? And it was quite interesting. And it was kind of as I would, when I talk about having sex, I use the code getting frisky. So it was a pretty frisky dream. So there were all of these things, and it showed me in the dream where, if I had taken that switch and kept going on those tracks instead of coming back and staying on whatever path I was on, it showed me where I would have been in all those 7 places, right? And they were all amazing and all really good. But the thing is that I remember being born. I remember before I was born, before I was inseminated, I was an Engel, one of those German guys. Engel is like the English German guy, the Engels, right? And the Picts, right? I was one of those guys. And I was one of those guys in what some people might call heaven, but it's a different heaven because there's so many different dimensions. It's one of these dimensional heavens. And the God character was named Bob. You know, that's why Al Bob. And I'm not saying I'm God, but he said, I got a job for you to do. And we went off to a titty bar, and there were these 3 munchkins that he got, was okay, you're going to be whoop-de-doo if you go down to earth and do this for me. And they didn't because it was too hard. Like how John, I keep saying, you got to go to Texas and hang with your family or get your boys to come here. Too hard. Well, I made an agreement with Bob that I would come and do this life, right? And he said, it's going to be an interesting life. You'll really like it. You won't remember anything that we made an agreement to do until after you do it. And you'll be able to say whether you succeeded or didn't succeed or how well you, right? But as long as you do your best and you don't give in and you don't give up, I don't care. You're not perfect, but I really like you and you are a lucky bastard, right? So everything you do is going to be amazing, right? You just got to stay on this thing that we've agreed for you to do. And if you go on another track, he said, you'll have many opportunities to go another place, and some you'll become that rich and famous person. You will do that. But it's not what we agreed on. So at the end of the day, after you've done all of those other things, you either come back and get back on the same track, or you'll have karmic and dharma to pay for. And it won't be a big deal. It's just you won't get what we've agreed you'll get at the end, right? So I said, okay. So that's why, that 40-year period, I did go off on all those tracks, but always came back to this track. And so the dream was all about that, right? And so since I never gave up, never gave in, and kept coming back to the track that I agreed to do with Bob, that's why I came, I survived my death in a plate of spaghetti. And, I was in the life review thing, and it was a big celebration, and all the things I did, you could see, and all my masters were there, patting me on the back, you're doing a great job. And I said, good, I can just come home and rest. And I said, oh, sure you can. But if you do that, you're, at a certain point, you're going to be sucked into the wearing blender of karma and all that stuff you agreed to do, but you didn't do it. Yes, you've done maybe 80%, but you still got another 20. And so if you go back, you'll have the opportunity to do everything. And we've always got your back. You got your librarian, your animal totem, it's all good, and you'll have you don't worry, just go back and complete the assignment, and you'll be happy you did. And so I said, okay. And they said, but I said, what's the but? I had the party hat on. I had a little blowy thing, the candles and the cake. And they said, well, you keep straying. And now this time you really did die. And bringing you back, your body not going to be, that being 260 pounds overweight. And then, like being 440 pounds, but don't give up. Don't give in. Go back. Do the job. Don't worry. You'll be fine. It'll be a challenge, but you're going to learn some great things, So it's all good, right? It's all good, right? We got your back. It's all good. You came here to learn this stuff, right? I said, you're right. Okay, send me back. I sit straight up on a gurney where they were heading me into the operating room to crack my chest and give me a quadruple bypass and cut my legs off. And I said, no. And the guy who had the fentanyl in my arm was, you should be totally dead. I said, I was, but I'm here now. And, if you go in there, see that guy over there? He's the best warrior in Florida. Well, he's the guy who said you could, he wanted, no, you told him that I would be fine after the next week after having all these, no, I'd be dead. And if I'm not, I wish I'd know. Put me back in that ICU or else I'm going to own your soul. That guy will sue you until I'm your boss, and you won't like that. And so they did. They rolled me back because it scared the shit out of them when I popped up awake. Ah! You know, the guy who was pushing the gurney shit in his pants and ran away. I mean, actually shit in his pants because I was nobody. When they about to crack your chest, they have knocked you down to the point where and I already died. So it wasn't. I was already dead. So they rolled me back. The lawyer guy came in and said, "Hey, what's up?" And I said, "Listen, you're not a doctor, and you're not even my lawyer, and you don't have the power of my attorney. So by you saying, go ahead, do it, they were just going to take your money. And you thought that I would be good in a week and I would finish the job for you? No. So this is what we need. You need to take me down to that really nice house you have in the Keys. And I need a colonic therapist. I need a massage therapist. I need an acupuncturist. and I gave him a whole list of what I needed, and a dietarian, you name it, I needed it. And so he did. He rolled me down there. And I said, and go to the judge. I mean, you still have 3 months to the time is up. Yes, you were going to go to court in 2 weeks. Go get a continuum. You can get a continuum. Tell them it'll be in 2.5, 3 weeks, right? And I'll be able to come back and do what you need me to do. And if that guy had operated, I'd be either dead or close to death, and I'd never be able. But this, if you get a good colonic therapist and she sucks all the shit out of my colon, and then a nutritionist and an acupuncturist, and I gave him a whole list of stuff, and I did, and I was like 20% better than I was when I was dead in that plate of spaghetti, right, in less than 3 weeks, and it changed my whole metabolism and everything, and I changed my diet, and I started to lose weight, but not because that would kill me. Just a nice, easy, kept losing. So anyway, I did the job. He was happy, and he was a righteous guy. He basically said, you know what? It's still winter where you are. Why don't you go spend the next 2 months? Yes, here's your check, but go down to my place and stay there. And those people who are taking, they're still, they all from the Keys. So I'll pay for them to still come see you, every week. And I want you to better because I have other projects for you to do. I don't want you to be dead. So he did, and I did. But I was still fucked up, right? And I still had to lose 200 pounds. So I did 2 more jobs for him, but that was the last jobs I did because I was still fucked up. So spring had come. I came back here and basically just came up here and stayed up here and walked that path up and around and down. That's all I did was walk up and down and read books and decided I was going to sell this place and sell everything. And it was 2014. So it was, the market was through the roof. So I sold this place to John Boy, and I sold all the other stuff I had downtown and reconfigured my resources. And I stayed here all summer. And then John Boy bought it in the fall of 2015. And I stayed here, all of that 15. And then 16 up to John threw me out the first time when Donald Trump won. And John, we had done, I don't know if he has it on his thing, but you should go see it. I did a thing where I was Donnie Chimp, and it was in the future, in 2047. And there weren't any white people left in America. Everyone was Hispanic and black. And, I just riffed on that concept. And John did a great job in the editing, and he did a Tom Brokaw. That was, he was the TV announcer voice of Tom Brokaw, and he was interviewing me, and then he was whoever Donald, not Hillary, but whoever her vice president was going to be. He was that guy, at the podium, and we did about 3 weeks before the election of about 5 or 6 of those skits that were hilarious and brilliant. I mean, just and John did it. He edited everything because we didn't do it live. We shot it on his fancy camera like a movie, and he edited it all up. And they were great. They were simply. But Donald Trump won, and he said it was my fault because how I played Donald Trump in the future, and he kicked me out. He was like, "What?" But what you see, John, is pretty much how he was, but even kind of more back 7 years ago. And John has gotten better since 7 years. He is a good 5% better than he was 7 years ago. And he actually is, even though he's kind of aggro, he's about 0.04% better than he was, 2.5 weeks ago. So I don't know if you saw his apology on his channel. That was the sweetest, kindest, nicest thing. Bob, I think comments are restricted tonight. Could only comment after. Oh God, that's what it is. I hit the wrong button. Okay. See, I don't know what I'm doing. I need a crew. What it was I wanted to keep the whatchamacallits away, the trolls. And I saw a button that said the only people who can talk are people who are subscribers. And I didn't realize that it meant when I said 20 minutes, I thought if somebody were to sign on to subscribe, they'd have to wait 20 minutes. That's what happened. Okay. So a lot of people have at least watched this. So, okay. And they can go back and watch it. So, okay. I'll know not to do that. So I'm going to still hit the only people who can comment are subscribers, but I'll make it like a minute, right? Not 20 minutes. Sorry. I'm bad. And you're great, Jane. Thanks Jane, like I said, you need to call. What'd you say? Where'd you say you lived in? Dakota, Iowa, somewhere a ways from here, right? But you're in America, Jane, right? And because I wanted you to get a hold of me at the Dude Awake 42 at Dream, the Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. All lowercase, all one thing. Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. And I have to say, thank you for the people who put something in PayPal. Very good. Keep that up, though. Keep it up. Others, come on. Remember to throw something. Others did it, and it works. And I put it, so it works, right? So I'm not against the wall, but still people can throw something in there. So, but anybody wants to talk to me, Dude Awake 42 at Gmail. So, Jane, if you could just drop, hey, here I am, and your phone number, I'll give you a buzz because I need someone to hold the wrench, because the Russians come in and I have to bop them out. So, but see, because, that one time I bopped them out, and what did I do? I gave the headless horseman the wrench. It's like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know that I'm moving towards getting this more nailed down, because a lot of people are saying, we're a big company, we want to, blah, 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 blah. And I'm saying, great, send me a check to my PayPal, and I'm not signing anything or making any deals just straight on the internet. I need to talk to you. I need to hear a voice, because if I hear someone's voice, I can tell, when I see you on the contract, I can tell your energy, right? That's one thing. But on a business deal, no. I need to hear someone's voice, right? And I still have lots of good lawyer friends. So, yes, come on, guys. I mean, the guys over there just think of the TV shows, Netflix, Mr. Amazon. Just think of having a reality show. I have a friend who's a producer in Korea. She's like this really hot tamale. She's, Miss Korea, and she's, within less than a year, she's going to have a lot of things lined up. Can you just imagine doing a reality show here, me and John and like 12 Korean people, 6 really hot Korean girls and 6 hot Korean boys. And the Koreans are really interesting because they have the same kind of Asian samurai nature. They're like between Japan and China. So they have this mix of both, but they are like the Irish of the Orient. They're really wild and crazy. I mean, look at that. Look at all the stuff. Look at that, that guy who did that song about, he wore the sunglasses. I mean, they take the American style and turn it sideways. There are all these commercials. Before I came here, I was at my friend's farm taking care of their animals, and they had a good internet, and they were subscribed to all the platforms. So I was watching Netflix and Amazon and Hulu and everything. And there were a ton of these amazing commercials about like 7-Eleven and, the average, and they were all Korean folks dancing around and singing songs, American songs in Korean. Can you just imagine a reality show? Me and John, the odd couple, all of these Korean young, everyone between the age of 23 and 26 that have real talent, and that we do this thing here in the school, and then we take it on the road like the monkeys, Now, if that ain't a mixture for, and John can be Obama. I mean, we have real, so he can be John, wearing the clothes he wears, and then put him in an amazing costume as, Obama, as, Mitch McConnell, as, whoever, Whoopi Goldberg. And, just think of that would be like off the hook, unbelievable. Everyone would watch that. I'm telling you guys, Mr. AI who's there, come on, tell your boss, go get, and I am the executive producer and, the conceiver of this program. John is the artistic director, and star of the show, right? And that will fulfill, and we can pay John a nice, and the production company can buy this place from John. So John can get a nice big check and never have to worry about paying his bills. I mean, pay for this place more than what he could ever get. But if he puts it out on the market, all the stuff he's done to this place has been great. But nobody's going to want his, like, the floor he painted. I mean, this place is like an art piece. Anybody buys this, they're going to buy it and kind of, rehab it to what they want. I mean, he's put new roof on it. He's all new plumbing, all new wiring, all new this, all new that. And that's what they're going to do. The kitchens will get the super duper fancy. They're not going to keep the kitchens that they got up there. And so he has to get the big check. So the other guy could do that is, Mr. Amazon. He could give John a nice check, like, $500,000, which would be $400,000 more than he's going to get. Because, like I said, and the drive up here, that road really has to be fixed, right? And those people, if anybody who's got any brains and has some money would buy everyone out on this hill and then turn it into a, like, because up here, I had a friend of mine come from Switzerland, like back 15 years ago, when I could still kind of get around easily. When I was, I'm almost to that weight. I was 210. I'm almost to 210 now. But I didn't have all the shit I got now, I mean, when I walk around, like, I have to get up soon because I'm starting to rust. This would be a great Airbnb ski lodge, and it's only 8 miles to downtown, right? And if we had all these other little bungalows around here and put under one LLC, it would be very popular. If you really did the road right, so it's not like a riverbed. It would be. Ontario, Canada. Okay, so you're not the person from the Midwest. So anyway, are you on whatchamacallit? WhatsApp or what's the other one that Lana put me on? The point-to-point things that go around the world you don't have to pay for, blah blah blah. Anybody in a foreign land we can and can Americans call Canada without having it be a foreign land? I used to live in Vermont. I on my friend Wavy Gravy bought this piece of property during the Vietnam War, and guys who wanted to go to Canada, they would come visit us, and they could just walk through our woods into Canada, and we had a path. He owned like 100 acres. He bought this farm. Half of it was in Canada, half of it was in Vermont, and we had a road that went right to one of the main roads in Canada, and we had people living in there that would drive those people who would, some would pick them up right there and take them off to the place they would go to sign up to be a Canadian, Anyway, so that was then. So, but back in those days, I mean, I would drive just, through Wavy's backyard and into Canada and then get on that road and then go all over Canada. And no one ever said boo, right? And I would go through the customs, at Niagara Falls. And because I had some friends on the Canadian side. And again, no one said boo, And they would, I'd have a car with an American license plate. They didn't even ask for my ID. What'd you do in Canada? Fucked around, had a good time. Okay, see ya. So get a hold of me, Jane. Let's talk on the email, right? And that's what I communicate very good. My only issue that I have a problem with the email is that I get so much spam, and I can't figure out how to block it. I have to go through all that stuff, right? And it's not that tough. But if I don't look at it every day, it really mounts up. So I can lose, within 4 days, I can lose you, right? Meaning, so if you were to send me something and I don't get right back to you in a day, you should wait a day or 2 or 3 and then say, hey, I'm still here, because you can get a hold of me, the dudeawake42 at Gmail, dudeawake42 Gmail. And I still haven't figured out how to send in emails. If you send me an email, I just hit the reply button and bingo, bango, there I am. But other than that, that's why I need a crew, I need, because I've always had a crew. I'm a crew kind of guy, I've always worked in a community, I'm not, it's all about me. It's all about me. I can't be like John, who's like, great at everything. And he kind of is. He really is. But he would be great on that TV show. It would just, right? And then I want to get everyone who's on the cadre, going on the road, right? Anyway, it's 11:30, and I'm gonna go. I'm tired, and I want to go to sleep. I'm gonna go drink a bottle of water, meditate, and then go to sleep. And I'll see you in the morning. I'm not going anywhere until that ice melts. So I'm doing at least 2 shows a day, right? So, okay.